Hello, I'm Peter Hancock from Pride of Britain Hotels, and today I've been joined by one of our illustrious members, David Morgan-Hewitt, who is Managing Director of the famous Goring Hotel in London. David, it's good to see you again.
Very nice to see you, Peter. I'm stuck down here in Wells, sunny Wells in Somerset.
Now, you've been Managing Director and previously General Manager, so at the Goring for very nearly 30 years. What have been the high points for you so far?
I suppose if I was going to look at highlights, Peter, it would be the awards we've got. But I suppose if you said to me, no, I want one highlight, one thing you're going to take with you, absolutely, it's got to be the royal wedding. It was the first time in history that a royal bride had left from a hotel, and it was just the most extraordinary weekend. It was incredible. But it had been quite a rough time. We'd had the banking crisis and everybody was a bit sad. There'd been literally 2 or 3 years of miserable times for everybody. And then suddenly there came this incredible weekend. And London, I mean, the sun shone for a start, but London really did shine in a most extraordinary way. And we played a tiny part, an absolutely tiny part in it, really. But we did have the bride and her family staying with us. And we did wave her off from the Goring. In fact, I actually didn't wave her off because they were so sweet. And Jeremy Goring and I were both invited to the wedding. So we didn't wave them off, but we waved them in. And it was the first time we got to see the dress as well.
David, the Goring has an enviable reputation for attracting royal visitors. What's the secret?
I think, to be honest, the real secret is discretion. And what I mean by that, of course, it's a matter of public record, some of the visits that have been to the hotel, whether they're for the royal wedding or whether they're Her Majesty coming or other members of the royal family, or indeed other royal families around Europe. But we don't discuss them. So I think the secret is that we don't tell people what goes on once those royal guests come through our door.
Yeah, well, you must have some stories that you feel at liberty to share.
Yes, I have some stories, but I can't say I feel at liberty to share.
Let me try another way. Who else, other than members of royal families, has stayed in your royal suite?
I mean, you're probably asking me, do we have Hollywood stars and the like? Well, yes, I mean, we do. It would probably be quicker to tell you who hasn't been, but that might give you rather too much of a clue as to who has been. And what is fascinating, and we've had a number of really A-list couples and families staying with us over the years, and hardly anybody ever knows they're there. And that's the joy of what we do for them. And that's why they come back time and time again. Every now and then, you'll see someone who's coming out of afternoon tea or something, walking across the hall and doing a double take and saying, is that so-and-so? And usually the other person will say, no, it can't be. And that anonymity is I think what it's all about. And so that royal suite, yes, it's very busy. In fact, we only have one royal suite, and of course there are times when there are rather more than one group of people after it. But yeah, we have plenty of people going in there. But am I going to tell you who they are? No.
Well, you've answered beautifully, because the secret is, it's a secret. I remember very early in my time visiting the Goring, I'd arranged to have lunch with one of our sponsors there, and I'd neglected to book a table. And so we were relegated to the bar, and we were just about to get started on our drinks, and your maitre d' came and found us and said, "Oh, there you are, Peter." He said, "I've got some very bad news, I'm afraid, but some good news too." I said, "Oh dear, what's the bad news?" He said, "I'm sorry to have to tell you that Baroness Thatcher was rushed into hospital this morning suffering from a suspected stroke." "Oh dear," I said, "I'm very sorry to hear that. What's the good news?" "You can have her table. Follow me." And we did. That's true.
Well, yes, I mean, it was well known that she did come to the hotel a lot. And actually, I remember once I was entertaining a journalist from the New York Times, and in walked Lady Thatcher. And she sat down, and she was only sort of one table away from us. And at that point, I knew there was a God because Henry Kissinger walked in the dining room and walked across. Well, you can imagine we got such a great review in the New York Times after that lady had sat opposite two greats of their era.
Absolutely, yes. Now, you're a well-travelled man, David. You must have some favourite hotels around the world. Would you care to divulge?
Gosh, yes, I mean, I do have favourite hotels. And interestingly, I think there's one thing about my favourite hotels that they all have. They're all luxurious, inevitably. They're all wonderful, but they all belong to where they are and really, in a way, couldn't be anywhere else. And I think that's part of what makes a great hotel. So I love the Carlisle over in New York. I mean, a great hotel. It's got that sort of residential English sort of feel about it, and yet it's in the middle of this busy metropolis. Likewise, the Bel Air in Beverly Hills, well, in Bel Air, in fact, in LA, incredible. I mean, it's beautiful. It cossets you, makes you feel really welcome, and it's very.
Been there, actually.
Oh, have you?
I went there a long time ago, and the general manager, whose name escapes me now, I think he might have been called Frank, a Yorkshireman.
Frank Bowling.
And as he was showing me around, there was the sound of a lawnmower the other side of the hedge, and he said, "I do apologise for the noise, Mr. Hancock. That is Leonard Nimoy cutting his grass." That's a nice little name dropping, isn't it?
Well, I mean, and that's the sort of place it is. I mean, like all of these great hotels. I mean, I went one Sunday night. I was having dinner with a friend of mine, and there were only two other tables in. And I went off to the loo, and I was followed by George Clooney. I mean, you can't blame him, but it was very exciting for him, I think.
Yes, it must have been like meeting his twin.
Indeed, he couldn't. Well, when he looked up, I'm sure he thought that.
And do you have any favourites here in the UK, David, aside from your own establishment?
Luckman Park, which I think when you go up that wonderful avenue of double row of lime trees and you hit that fantastic Bath stone country house, it's brilliant. It's like I was saying about the Goring earlier. It's relevant. Gravetime Manor springs to mind. I mean, that was, of course, one of the very first country house hotels ever set up in the UK by Peter Herbert many, many years ago. And it's surrounded by really an award-winning, incredible garden. And it's lovely to go down there because, as you know, we're really the only hotel in London that has a large private garden at the back of our hotel. And so, genuinely, we have looked to places like Gravetye to get our inspiration for our herb garden and all the other various bits.
But the Goring has become known as an annex, or if you like, an overspill to Buckingham Palace. How do you think that has come about?
Well, I mean, I know people have said that, Peter, but in many ways, I'm not sure I can. I mean, I know where they're coming from. Look, there have been many great occasions such as coronations and christenings and great parties that have taken place. And of course, we are next door to Buckingham Palace. So there are many people who come and stay with us if they're going to the palace. And interestingly enough, of course, many people do go to the palace in order to pick up awards. I think that's when our restaurant is absolutely at its best. You walk in there to lunch. I'm sure you've done it. I'm sure you've been there on investiture days. And you know, ladies are in fantastic hats, and there are so many men in uniforms. Many of them, of course, not entitled to them, but they look lovely dressed up in them. And I loved your hat when you came. But it's wonderful. The whole thing is so colourful. It's so celebratory. We can always tell who's been giving out the gongs, as the Queen always is on time, and the Prince of Wales tends to be a little bit chattier, and so we know we're in for a slightly later lunch if we find out it's him. But it's wonderful. You see all these people who've achieved great things.
It must be their happiest day of their lives in most cases.
I think it is. I mean, I think it's an amazing day. They go and see a member of the royal family. They're recognised for something they've done, and then they come to lunch with us.
Well, if it should ever happen to me, I shall know where to go for lunch afterwards.
Peter, if it ever happens to you, we'll give you lunch on us.
That's very kind. A very safe bet.
Oh, As I say, so that's not going to cost us
No,
anything.
no, exactly. So, David, what can the Gorings' many regular customers expect when they are finally allowed to return? When the doors reopen, will your footman still be there, for example?
When people return to the Goring, they can expect more of the same. Hopefully better than we had before. I mean, that's been what we've been doing for 110 years, is trying to distill and refine that sort of hospitality. I mean, our footmen are very much part of what we do. They are the way in which we ensure that people are really taken care of. I mean, footmen only belonged in the greatest of houses, because only they could really afford to have people who were there to make sure that people felt loved, were being really taken care of, and pretty much their every need was being met. And that's what I think people are going to want when they come back to the Goring. And we certainly are going to do the same when we reopen, whenever that is. Hopefully very soon, because, you know, there's one thing that the Goring needs more than anything else, and that is guests.
Of course, yeah. And I think they'll be longing for some hospitality after this period of incarceration. And you and the Goring are the epitome of great hospitality. David Morgan-Hewitt, thank you very much.
Peter, wonderful to chat to you, and enjoy the lockdown. Stay sane.
Thank you. Will do.